There were a few things that I promised to get to in class today, that is on January 21st. And since I didn't, I thought I would put them in a video. There were two things that were asked and I promised but didn't have time for. One had to do with this arrays toString that has been used a couple of times but hasn't really been commented on. And the second had to do with how you can find what kind of methods are available. So first, to do that, I will just create a new little class. I'll test arrays toString just to illustrate this. This is a method in Java that's provided. So just to illustrate, let's create a poker deck. And again, what do you do when you have a red squiggly? It says cannot find symbol. You do a fix imports. And normally that will find it. And if you've fat fingered one of the names, then it won't find it and you'll still have the red squiggly. Okay, so all right, so here's our poker deck. And what you should be able to do is just print it out. Spelling it reasonably well. And also not fat fingering what we're doing here. So run that, and again, what I get is the unshuffled going from ace of clubs up through the king of spades. Okay, so that's so we have our poker deck there. I'm just going to comment out that just because I'm not going to use it. Now, one of the things that the poker deck can do is give us an array of single cards in dealing a hand. Okay, now one of the first things, now notice here, okay, so here's an instance of poker deck, and when I hit dot, and your mileage may vary on this, but what it brings up is are all the methods that I can call with this. Now there's just a slight organization here where the top two are ones specific to poker deck or overridden by that. And then these are ones that are in the card deck class, which is a superclass of that. Things like equal, okay, that is actually in object. And in fact, now notice above this is another window, and that window is actually the Java doc for the particular method that I'm looking at. So deal poker hand is in poker deck. Get my cards is actually in card deck, but that's inherited by poker deck. Create new deck, again, that is in poker deck because that overrid, that was an override of create new deck. Deal next card is in poker deck. Okay, now equals, now notice equals is something that's in Java. We will be dealing with equals later in the course, but again, you can see that this is a method that's in object, and because every class that we write will extend object, then we have all the methods in object. So again, here's card deck. Get class is one for object in object. Things like hash code, notify, etc. There's shuffle deck, and that's in poker deck. There's the toString, and this shows that the toString that poker deck is using is in fact the one inherited from card deck. But then it also notes that it's in the class object as well. Okay, and then these are all object ones. So what I want is I actually wanted this first one to deal the poker hand. So And then, okay, red squiggly, cannot find symbol. What's the fix? Fix imports. Okay, so there's the hand. Now, Java does is say, okay, here's an array. Now, supposing I wanted to just print that, then again, every array is itself an object, and its type is array of whatever this is. Being an object, it is a subclass of the object class. I know that's confusing. So it has a toString. So now if I run this, let's see what I get. What I get is kind of gobbledygook, although you can kind of interpret this. See this little bracket L? That indicates that it's an array. And what is the type of the array? That's what's given here. And then this last little bit of gobbledygook is just that relates to something called the hash code. So this is not very useful. So if I want to know what cards or what the contents of this array is, very simply, well, I could write a for loop, but that's a lot of typing just to kind of check out what this is. So instead, there is something called arrays toString. Now, and then notice that there's a whole lot of these. Okay, so notice arrays with a capital A dot toString. So this is not the same as those instance methods for two reasons. One is that it has an argument. The regular toString in one of your classes does not have an argument. That's the first one. The second is that it's the name. This is actually the name of a class dot toString, and what that means is that this is a class method. This arrays toString is a class method of the class arrays. And in fact, we can see what there are lots of different methods in this arrays class. One way, again, like what I did is I put my cursor here, I hit Control Space, and that brings up all the different possibilities. And there are a whole bunch of them. We're not going to worry about what that is for now. However, if I want to actually see what's here, I can actually either here or even down here, I can right click on it and choose Navigate to Source. And that will take me to, this is actually the source code for the arrays class. And if I want to see what toString does, then I need to sort of find it down here. So here's the toString that we're using here. Okay, and you can kind of see what it does. It's exactly how it does it is not terribly important. It's using something called a string builder. Later in the course, we'll talk about what string builder is. So, and actually, we can kind of figure out what's going on here. First of all, if I give it a null, then all of this stuff down here is going to give me a null pointer exception. But I say, well, if it's null, we're just going to return null. Now, whoever wrote this would get docked a few points because they did not put a curly brace in here. This is technically legal, but again, for our purposes, not very cool. So again, what it does is sort of less important. Another thing that you can do is you can show the Java doc for this, and again, it's opening it up in my web browser, so you're not going to be able to see it. So that's sort of less of an issue. And that also applies to any class that you've written. So if I want to see, okay, I forget what's in there's poker deck, but All right, what's in single card? I don't have that, so I can simply navigate to source, and that will take me to my single card here. Okay, so again, just to review, I've shown you how to use arrays, toString, oh, I actually haven't shown. That's better. We better run it. Okay, so you see I run it here, and because this is an unshuffled deck, it will give me the first 5 cards: ace of clubs, deuce of clubs, etc. So it's doing the correct thing. If I want to see what happens if I shuffle it, and now this is for testing. This is sort of not necessarily bad, but deal poker hand. Okay, so in component code, when you're writing the code, this is a little bit too cutesy. But what I'm doing here is simply saying, okay, poker deck deal poker hand is going to return an array of single cards. All I want to do is just see what's in there after I've shuffled it, and so I'll just put that all on one line. Again, this is not the worst thing in the world, but it's actually preferable to do it this way. And this is just sort of an option. But when we run it, we see again now here, instead of just the first 5 cards, we see they are kind of mixed up.